I don't even know what I'm doing right now.
Oh, camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1. Live stream.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on BQLive. My name is Jerid Hill.
I'm Eric Dean.
And as you seen, our director kind of went live prematurely, but that's the story of his life. We'll just move on from there.
Wow.
So anyway, so as always, we just want to remind you that at the end of the show, we do have a Q&A session. And you can always, if you're joining us on BQ.live down at the bottom, you can hit Let's Talk, click on the option, put your name in there so we know who we're talking to. And also you could go on YouTube and choose the chat section right there if you're on YouTube watching.
Definitely.
And of course, throughout the week, you can always send us emails still, info@bq.live if you don't have a chance to participate in the questions this time.
Yeah, we had a few people today asked me if we were going to be archiving the show, so everybody, go to bq.live and you can see all of our previous shows as well. If you're not able to watch it live, you can always watch it later. And let us know if you have any questions after the fact, just let us know.
Yep. And so normally every week we have a guest a shirt.
I bet it's the Mac OS.
We didn't do that this week. And the reason why we didn't is a continuation of last week. And so we just kind of wanted to go with the flow of that, and so
jump right in.
Yeah. And last week we talked about how to start a T-shirt business. Right. So this is going to be a part 2, and but last week we talked about multiple facets of the business, and we started with the business structure. There was writing a business plan, setting up vendors, and different things like that. But I also want to say that we're not lawyers.
Yeah.
We're not accountants. So if there's anything on the show that maybe we said that you might have some questions with, that's okay. Contact your accountant.
Don't ask us.
Yeah, we just have limited experience in certain areas, but we just want to make sure that you get the right information. So if you do have any questions that maybe needed clarified or anything like that, you can ask us. If we don't know, we're just going to point you right back to the appropriate person anyway. Right. So this time I think we're going to just have to talk about equipment.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of the next step. Can't really do anything without equipment, I guess.
No, there's a lot of different equipment setups you can do.
Sure.
Right, and so we're direct to garment, obviously, but I think I'm gonna let that one for last because
I feel like that's the cream of the crop, the top of this.
Well, it's probably the heaviest price.
Sure.
Unless you start to go into automation.
20 color automatic.
Right, stuff like that. Yeah. But if it's just, you're like wanting to start out relatively
starting
small.
From the ground floor up.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So the first one would be probably the easiest, least expensive.
Heat press and transfers.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, even today or yesterday, you saw I did some, I ordered some plastic transfers from another company.
He shouldn't tell you that because it's a DTG company, but he's going to do transfers.
But I did some transfers because it was for a buddy of mine that has an electrical contracting company, and DTG just wasn't a good fit for them, So I got him 15 cents a piece, one color transfers, knocked them out 7 seconds a piece. I mean, and it worked well for his needs. And I didn't charge him anything. I mean, I did it at cost, so. Yeah. But it worked out. I mean, I love them. Heat presses are worth their weight in gold, man. I mean, there's so many things that a heat press can bring to the table for you, different services and different products you can sell, and man, I love them.
Well, yeah, if you're starting out, just starting out, then obviously transfers, I believe are going to be the least expensive because one, like Eric said, you can buy them. You don't have to even make them yourself.
All right.
But there's different types of transfers. There's laser transfers. So you just print. You have to have a special paper that you would print on from a laser printer, right?
They even have the white ink toners now.
They do have white ink toners. The problem I have mainly with laser transfers up to this point has always been it transfers the material. Inkjet transfers the same way. It transfers the material.
Right.
So it's not only the ink, but the material. So you end up feeling
rubbery kind of.
Yeah, it could even feel like paper, because it's so stiff.
It's not quite as bad as like a print cut type of vinyl, I don't
Right.
think. But it is crispier. I don't know how. That's
Right.
the easiest way I can describe it. It doesn't have that nice soft hand. It's
Right.
definitely got a crispier hand. It's not like raised hand though. It's so weird. You have to just feel them. Let's see.
Yeah, and it's really going to depend on, what you're trying to do. If you're selling at, a flea market,
Right.
you're probably selling your shirts for $2, $3, $4 a pop anyway. You're not going to be doing with your standard laser transfer that you transfer directly onto the garment. You're not going to be doing dark garments,
Right. No.
right? There are, inkjet transfers where same thing. You're not going to be doing dark garments unless you print on a backing. They actually have like a white
Yeah.
transfer
It's like
material.
a 3-paper step. Heat this, press
This
to that,
one-
step that. I mean,
yeah, I think this one actually is. It's more like a 2-part.
Okay, that's
But
not
what
as
you
bad.
do is you print directly on it, and then you can cut around it with scissors.
okay. Oh,
You know.
man.
So again,
It's
this
not
is
very
not
efficient.
very efficient. It's not very business worthy in my
Get your feet
opinion.
wet.
But if you're just trying to get going and just starting out, you can do that. So, but what you would do is you basically you cut around it and then you peel it off, and
Okay.
it's stable enough that you don't need a transfer tape.
Oh.
So you peel it off and then you just place it wherever you want and heat press it.
Oh, okay.
But it's been my experience with transfers that it's not as critical that your heat press is
Yeah.
always
Perfect.
the best of the
Yeah,
best.
you can get away with it a little bit cheaper.
Right.
But I have people ask me all the time what heat press to buy. And I tell them the biggest and most expensive one you can buy.
Yeah.
If you have $500, buy a $500 printer or a heat press. I mean, and even if you have to, I would highly, highly suggest, especially in the DTG realm. If you can't afford a $3,000 Fusion or whatever, get online, go to Craigslist, go on eBay, try to find a used Hotronix or a used Geonite or a used Hicks. Get a name brand printer or heat press. I keep saying printer. Get a name brand heat press. And don't stick with a Chinese $80 heat press from eBay. You're just asking for trouble. But if you're doing transfers and stuff like that, it's not like you say. It's
Still
not
needs to be
near-
durable though. Too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you got to watch about the
Still needs
heat
to be
drop.
durable.
In cold spots, you can still have problems, but it's not as imperative like
It's
it
a
is
little more
in DTG.
forgiving
Absolutely.
than something like direct to garment.
And I would recommend, transfer people. There are a zillion transfer companies out there. So I'd get samples from everybody because some companies do better with plastic transfers. Some companies do better with 4-color process transfers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not actually going to buy a machine or your own printer to print them in house and you just want to heat press them, you can get sample kits from all of the major transfer companies and try them out. I've seen some that work better than others, and some are hot peel, some are cold peel. They have stuff for nylon, stuff that we can't DTG. You can always use a transfer for as well. So
Yeah, and there's different types of transfers. So you have the laser, you have different like inkjet. They have the print and cut, which is inkjet, but it's so they'll print it out, cut it, and then apply a mask to it, and then you peel the mask and then you place it where you want it. And then there's in my opinion, screen printed transfers are the best
that's
transfers.
what I like the best.
Right, it's the next to the best durability in the industry, which would be screen printing for outside of dye sublimation. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But basically, so with your I think transfers can be the most versatile, right? It can go on various substrates
Yes.
and so forth. You can actually start out a business with a heat press.
Oh, sure.
You don't even need to print the transfers. You can sub that out.
Well, we can even go back to before. I mean, if you're not to the point to where you even have anything going, start from zero. Just sub it out. Sub the whole thing out. Sub every aspect of it. You just sell it, and let somebody else do it, print it for you, and then buy a heat press, and then buy your own transfer printer or DTG printer, whatever your market dictates. But you can get into the t-shirt printing business without actually buying any physical equipment.
Right.
With just a website and some vendors. You start that way if you have to. And I recommend it. A lot of people come to us at trade shows, and they're not ready to buy DTG. They're just not ready. And so we'll put them in contact with one of our customers that has DTG, let them build up their clientele, and then once they're ready, then come back and pull the trigger on a printer. Because we don't want to set somebody up to fail. We want you guys to succeed. So it works out well that way sometimes.
Right.
So.
And I think one of the latest in transfers that's hot,
Oh man,
bling.
bling,
Right.
blowing up, especially in
Bling.
Texas.
Yeah, deep in the heart of Texas. I don't know what it is, but yeah, you have bling, so rhinestones,
Sequins.
sequins, different things like that. And, of course, it's a perfect time to give a shout out.
What's up, Rhinestone World?
So he knew my thought right there.
They're our buddies. We have a good time with those guys
Yeah.
down. They're just about an hour south of us, I
Yeah,
think.
something like that.
Yeah. So,
So-
if you guys need rhinestones, you have questions about rhinestones, flock, cutting, go talk to those guys at the Rhinestone World. Ask for Rudy or Matt. They'll hook you up.
Right. And then, so that's the basic transfer. So if you're going to, purchase a heat press, you could sub out the transfer material, those types of things. So that's going to be your least expensive methodology,
Yeah.
right? And it's really just going to depend on your transfer, your heat press. But if you're going to start out with transfers, you might as well just get a good quality heat press now, so that way when you go into additional embellishing types later, you'll have a good quality heat press up front. If you can't afford that and you do want to go a little bit lower, you can build up your clientele, and just invest in it as you go. Get a little bit better heat press. And so then the next one would be still kind of like transfers, but be more like a vinyl cut,
Right.
right?
So like HTV, is that what we're talking about more than like a print cut system?
No, just
Just a plotter on its
Right,
own. Yeah.
Right. Because that right there, I mean, if you're just starting out, then you have the vinyl cut where it just cuts the vinyl out. And so there's a lot of what they call weeding. So
Yeah,
that's pulling away the material you don't want.
Yes.
But you have to have a heat pressable material. And so what you do is you create the artwork. It's all going to be vector,
Yep.
right? So you create your artwork. You create, you say it's a die line or a cut line, and then you reverse everything.
Yeah, you got to mirror it.
You have to mirror it, so it cuts it backwards. You pull away what you don't want. You put a transfer tape on top of that, pull that away, and then you hold that and put it on your shirt and heat press it. And that's there's all kinds of systems out there. I've actually owned the overseas cutters, the lesser priced ones. And they do good. The problem is you just can't get real intricate
Yeah,
cuts.
the fine cuts.
Right. So if you have a lot of designs that would be real intricate, you're going to do better with a higher dollar product.
I have like a little 24-inch GCC, and it's big enough to do shirts, and I can do some small signs, very small stuff. I mean, I could cut stuff for like a Coroplast sign or something like that, or hours for. I did all my own signage for my shop, like my hours and logo on the door. So I didn't do the big. Then we had a picture of the big, huge graphic I had on the wall, and I couldn't print that with that thing.
Yeah.
But and weeding will make you pull your hair out sometimes.
It can. It can.
You have to learn, just like with anything else, you'll learn how to design specifically for the technique or decorating technique. Or if you're doing plastic transfer, you're doing full color, you're doing whatever, you're gonna have to design accordingly to make it the easiest for you. I mean, because it can get very tedious.
Right. And so you could do a dual purpose when it comes to transfers, right? Or I'm sorry, final cut. So one, we're talking about making T-shirts. So the T-shirt material that you use has somewhat of a sticky back to it. Right?
It's not like normal vinyl though.
It's not like normal vinyl. Not the transfer material, but the carrier that the transfer is, or the vinyl is on. It's a little, from at least the experience I've had, it's
got a little tacky,
right?
Yep.
So when you're weeding, what you're talking about, it kind of can be painstaking to try to pull little areas that you don't want. But on this material, actually, it makes it a little bit nicer because it doesn't pull away the other material as easy. So if you're going to do T-shirts, then obviously this type of material is really good for that. And again, we've always said it before: is you really want to mix your technology too.
Absolutely.
And again, we've said it before where I've said it where I've done screen printing on one side, I did direct to garment on the other side. I've done vinyl, I've done screen printing mixes. You just use whatever tools you have. But if you're just starting out with one technology, then of course we're talking about vinyl cut. You can now use that technology for, like Eric was saying, Coroplast. So it's plastic material, sign material, different things like that. So you can actually make signage with that.
And you also can use it to make your templates for the rhinestones. Because you're going to use flock, which is flock is kind of like a suede material, and it's used for a lot of stuff. But the rhinestone people, they use it for their templates to brush stones into. And you have to have a plotter to do it,
right.
Or you can buy pre-made stuff. But I mean, if you want to do them in-house, you have to have a vinyl cutter to do it. And we saw at the show, One of the shows earlier this year, Stalls had that weeding table where it heated up, the table heated up and made, I mean, I like to play with it, but the concept made complete sense to me on how to make that easier.
Right, it was a real big table. You just put your vinyl right onto the table.
You look like a drafting table kind of.
Right, and it keeps it a little bit warm, so it loosens up it heats it a little bit. So
I don't think it was very cheap though, but it was still. If
no,
you're doing a lot
it
of
wasn't
vinyl.
very inexpensive, but I think it was somewhat reasonable. I think it was somewhat reasonable price. It was, but again, if you weed all day long,
it'd pay for itself in just labor pretty quickly.
I mean, I used to, back when I was running my print shop, I would also do vinyl, but then I would go down to a friend of mine who had a sign shop, and he had a guy in there that was the fastest person I've ever seen weeding vinyl. It was just amazing, and I could be watching him and sit down doing my own project, and he's doing his, and he's just like running circles around me. He was so fast at it, and but you can't really do that if you don't have a good plotter either, right? A good cutter, because if it's not cutting properly, if your blades aren't sharp, all the different aspects of that, you can't just pull the material away and expect everything to stay.
I mean, if you design it correctly, so you can avoid some weeding,
right?
Like I've seen people put cut lines into some other images that once they actually put it on a shirt or they put it onto the wall, you don't see that microscopic line. But when you're pulling the weed, it pulls it right out. So there's tricks to all that, and using the right fonts and stuff like that. Because I cut a koi fish, and it had like 300 scales. And I had to weed every single one of them. And I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
That's crazy.
At that point, I then reversed the image so that the scales stayed, and I removed the rest of it. So then I was just the outline of the fish was all I had to weed. It made it much, much easier.
If that's all I had was vinyl and I had to do something like that, I would probably call around and get it quoted. And whoever had the lowest, maybe they didn't understand all the work it was going to be, and I'd have to hold them to that price and let them do the job.
Mark it up a buck.
So that category, I guess, is, I think, the next step up, from just basic transfers or purchasing transfers. So I think your minimum cost you're going to start out, it's probably around $1,000, and that's for just a very basic cutter. That's not including material, but just a basic cutter. With a basic heat press.
A commercial grade. I mean, you can go to Hobby Lobby and buy one of the little paper type cutters, and those you don't want that. I mean, that's good for craft type of products, but you don't want that as to try to make shirts or anything professional that you're going to be selling. It just won't work for you the best way.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like a $400 or $500 vinyl cutter and a $400 or $500 heat press.
That should get you a good start.
Definitely. And it's not the best of the best, but it's good. It's good enough to do. And $400 or $500 for a plotter nowadays, you could do $400 or $500. You could do a 24-inch plotter for that.
Oh yeah.
Now it's not going to have like an electric eye or anything like that. I mean, I've had plotters with electric eyes, so you could print on a separate printer and cut material, because it lines it up for you and that kind of stuff.
I had an optical eye on mine, and I think I paid like $400 or $500 for it. It was reasonable.
Electric eye?
I think you said it was optical.
Yeah, optical
eye. I knew what you meant.
Yeah. But I mean, so you would depending on your need. If you're going to advance and you want to take this further, then you would probably want to spend a little bit more money. So I kind of think anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 price range is pretty good. $3,000 beyond on the high. Of course, I know somebody who, that same sign shop that I was talking about, their plotter, their cutter, they had a vinyl printer, right, and it was called a Gerber Edge.
Okay, yeah.
And then it was 15-inch wide. And then they had a cutter that was 15-inch wide, also made by Gerber. The cutter alone was $10,000.
Ooh.
Right, and this is a very fast cutter.
It better be.
It did an incredible job, but it's $10,000.
That's a lot of money for that.
Right, but they use that day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. Right, so they had several cutters, and they had 3 cutters, I believe, but they use that one more than any.
I mean, we have a plotter we use every single day.
Right. We do.
We every day we're making our stickers and stuff for the machines and whatever. I mean, it is probably one of the. I love it. It's one of the coolest tools to have in a print shop, regardless of what your actual market is. Having a plotter of some sort. We have a VersaCam But I mean, if whatever it is, it's awesome to have. It's so useful. So many different ways to utilize that, just like a heat press. So.
Well, so I wasn't really going to get too much into that, but since you mentioned it, I was trying to go kind of in order of pricing.
I jumped up on price quite a bit.
But that's okay. I didn't actually I wasn't going to make mention of it. I mean, we might have quickly said it, but yeah, it's a print and cut system, right? So it's a printer and a plotter or cutter all in one. So it would print out, so now you can, if you wanted to do, t-shirt material, you could print on that, cut it, heat press it on a black shirt, on polyester or whatever.
On a gym bag.
Right. And those typically, the lowest that I know of is a roll-in what do they call it? DN, no, that's not right. It's a roll-in. All of a sudden, I forget the name of it, but it's a roll-in BN20.
Oh, BN20.
Yeah, it's a BN20.
BN20. Yeah.
So it's a 20-inch plotter, but it's a good plotter and cutter, and it's a tabletop unit, but it's really slow.
A lot of people complain about that. That a lot of people will say it's better to get a cutter and a printer, two separate ones, so that they can both be working at the same time.
If you're into, depending on what you're doing.
Sure.
If all you're doing is print and cut, then it doesn't really matter, in my opinion.
Okay.
If you're doing vinyl signage and you're doing, printing and cutting in that manner, I think it works good, because then you can be
have two
printing.
projects.
You have two different projects going on at one time.
Okay.
But if it's a print and cut, I mean, it may gain a little. I don't know, because you're still waiting on the slowest process.
Well,
which in
and
this case would be
removing that
the
roll of
printer.
vinyl from the cutter or from the printer, moving it over to and getting. I mean, I know it's got marks and everything to keep it self-centered, but misregistration to me seems like it'd be much more prevalent when you're moving from machine to machine as opposed to having a print cut system all in one.
And it could go both ways, but I think those print and cut systems work really well. But those typically run, that BN20 is 10,000, I think. So that's going to be on the low end.
Yeah.
And then, move
Sky's
on
the
up
limit.
from there.
It
move
can
on
get
up
really
from there.
expensive.
So there's, that's the baseline price. But the next one, I think, if we're going to go kind of in order of succession, price-wise, I think is more like on the dye sublimation side.
You have your limitations with dye sub, though.
You do.
But yeah, dye sub is awesome because it never goes away. I mean, as far as washability and your substrates, like we dye sub these mugs, and you can wash that mug 5 million times, and it's probably never going to change the way that it looks. So that's what's cool about dye sub for sure.
Yeah. So dye sub, you're gonna it's sublimating polyester, right? And so you've got to have polyester base. So anything like the mugs and so forth, there's going to be coating on there.
Right.
It's a special, special coating. So what with dye sublimation, the limitation Eric was talking about when it comes to t-shirt garments or garments in general, fabric is polyester.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? You got to have 100% polyester, and not all two are equal in creation. So you're going to have one that works really, really well and another one that's not going to work as good. By far the best way to do dye sub, it's more tedious, but the best absolute way to do it would be roll to roll.
Oh yeah.
So you print off of a roll, and then you heat press big areas of fabric. So you would have a very large heat press, and then you would just heat press, and then you cut and sew.
Yeah, if you've seen it, you'll sometimes at trade shows you'll see a big roll to roll, and they'll print in the shape of a T-shirt. And that's for the pattern it's just like if you watch like bicycling, like the Tour de France, they're always wearing those full color jerseys. That's all dye sub. All of your fishing shows where they're out, that's all dye sub. So, and that's all done. Those all over prints, that's all done cut and sew. It's definitely not where
most of them are. If you look at anybody who has an all over print like that,
you can tell there's telltale signs.
You'll see like in the seam area, like where the seams of the sleeve are and so forth, you'll see white. Right. So that's from wrinkles. Right. So you're not gonna. Those are most of the time when people try to do that. It can actually work pretty well. You could design it to kind of have that look anyway. But I've seen some people that have done it pretty well, and they've gotten really good at it. That you minimize it. But by far the best, as Eric said, we've seen. trade shows, you see it a lot, but you'll actually see the shirt design itself printed out, and they'll cut that out, and then they'll sew it together, and of course according to sizes and things like that.
The other thing I guess take into consideration is there's no white.
Right.
No, so you can't sublimate a dark polyester. You can sublimate like if you sublimate, let's say, a gray polyester shirt, whatever's white in your image will now be transparent and is going to be the color of the shirt. And the ink, the dye, it's actually a dye, they're not 100% opaque.
Right.
So they have some transparency to them, so you will get some color shift also. So you just have to play around with it. It's just like kind of like printing with CMYK inks only on a purple shirt. It might come out good, it might not. So you just got to do some testing to see what works best, but it has to be 100% poly. So that's...
Well, and if you want a purple shirt, or you
Well,
want
you
a
can
gray
make it
shirt, you can make it that way
Right.
by dye
The
sublimating
whole
the
thing.
white fabric.
Right. You
Right.
turn the whole thing that color.
Right. So, but in the sense of startup, most people aren't going to do a cut
No,
and sew
big wide
operation.
full- yeah,
right.
no.
So you're probably gonna buy a small, like maybe a 13-inch inkjet printer, that kind of thing. But you have to have a special paper for that.
Yeah.
So you print onto the paper, and then you heat press or sublimate that onto the fabric. And what happens is it releases only the sublimated area, right? The gas that's been created sublimates the polyester. And so you pull away, and there's absolutely no feel whatsoever.
Right. It's
part of the
shirt,
fabric
yeah.
now, right?
Absolutely.
It's actually been merged, and
Right.
it's
dye.
it's the sublimation process,
yeah,
right?
that whole chemical
The
reaction.
gassing and so forth.
The ink is actually just a carrier for the dye. You're not actually the ink that you see when we think about when you buy a bottle of sublimation ink. The sublimation is not. It's not really ink. There's just the ink is what the carrier is to bring the pigment to the paper, and then that all evaporates away.
Yeah.
It's a cool process if you've never done. You'll see cell phone cases. You can dye sub opens up a lot of doors, like our mugs, our coasters. I mean, there's a whole huge industry of promotional type harsh substrates to use your sublimation printer on, and I mean, it's really a good thing to have. Also, I mean, even if you just got buy, like you said, buy a small one. To do some of these little unique things, as you don't get rid of it. As you grow, you start with transfer, you start with the heat press, start with the monocoat. Don't get rid of it.
Right.
Keep those things, because you're gonna be able to utilize those in other areas of your business for sure. I mean, there's no one size fits all.
Right.
Everything has its strengths and weaknesses. DTG, dye sub, all of them. And we're kind of hitting on all of those now. But don't cut one out just because you've moved on to a better technology. You still utilize it. I mean, I still use vinyl all the time. If I got a football team comes in and they want their names and numbers on the back of a jersey, I'm going to use vinyl. I mean, it's just a better fit for it. But anyways,
So also on the dye sub side though, one of the problems that people have is the seams of not the seams, but the edges of the paper will press into the polyester fabric as well. So there are tips and tricks and things like that you really have to start to understand and learn. But on the dye sub process, one, you're going to need a printer, and you're going to need a heat press.
and you're going to need special paper,
and you're going to need the special
inks.
paper and ink. So you're going to be probably in the $3,000 to $4,000 range.
Yeah, all in. Yeah, that's a good number.
For something like that. Again, you are limited to 100% polyester. You can't go beyond that.
Right.
And so that's going to limit you quite a bit. But in my opinion, out of all the processes for embellishing garments, I think dye sub is by far the most attractive in appearance to me, because
Pops.
you can get some incredibly bright
Yeah.
prints, and you can go all over.
It lasts forever.
And it just lasts and lasts. Again, the problem is I don't like 100% polyester
No,
shirts.
I don't
I don't
either.
wear them. I will never wear them. So it's me. I have no purpose.
Now
for
they have now some 100% poly that feels more like cotton.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, if you feel a cotton shirt next to it, you can
Right.
tell it's still not. It's like a brushed polyester almost.
Yeah, they do have a little bit softer.
It does feel better, but it's still.
And it
it's
just
only
doesn't
white.
breathe as well
No.
as with cotton.
Cotton will always breathe better than polyester.
Yeah.
That's why polyester is designed for filling your coat and in your pillow and in your
Right.
blankets and stuff. They're made out of polyester to keep you warm,
Right.
hold in heat.
Yep. So then we could go to screen printing.
Yep, that's the
Now,
big one.
screen printing has been around for thousands of years. It's very versatile. You can print on pretty much anything.
Yeah,
Practically anything. I've printed on rubber before.
sure.
With rubber ink. I've printed on glass. I can't use plastisol ink for that, but I have special ink for that.
Mhm.
Print on metal, put it on wood. So screen printing is the most versatile.
Yes.
But it's probably it's quite a learning curve. People don't realize, because a lot of times, we've said this before, people, you buy a screen, a squeegee, and just start printing, and you think you're a professional at it. But to really, really get good at screen printing, there's a lot of variances to understand how it works. And so, with screen printing, you're going to have a proper setup. You're going to want a flash
Yep.
unit, a press, at least a 4-color, 4-station press. I wouldn't go anything less. You might go six color if you want. They have what's called all heads down, which basically means it would be a 4-color, 4-station, and all the heads can go down at one time,
Mhm.
meaning you could have 4 different shirts on there. So you could have 1-color design, 4 different people printing 1-color designs, and they're all different.
All right.
Or a 6-color, 6-station press. But a lot of times people, I would always recommend at least a 4x4 press, 4 heads,
Mhm.
right, and 4 stations, 4 platens, or a 6x4, so 6 colors with 4 stations.
Right.
And again, 6 colors, 6 stations is probably going to be a little bit better. But of course, as you do that,
Goes up. Price
the
goes
price continues to jump.
up. And you also have to take into consideration your shop.
Right.
Because it's a big machine. Screen printing machines are a lot. That equipment is going to take up a lot more space than all the other.
Well, it depends on what you're doing, because you can have a 4-station, 4-color, 4-station press. It doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of room. The problem is the drying unit. And then you have your screen room.
Right.
Your washout room. All area and so forth. So it's not necessarily only that particular unit that takes up the space. It's everything that you have to use.
Everything
to
associated,
go
all
with
the
it.
process that's
Right.
needed. Yeah.
Now, if you're going to go automatic, then obviously you're going to have that's going to take up a lot of space, right? Usually, probably 30-foot diameter. Maybe that's a real big press. Maybe 20-foot diameter, on up and so
Mhm.
forth. So it really just depends on, what you're trying to accomplish. How big of a press you need. But so you're still going to need, a drying unit,
Mhm.
which a lot of times people try to use their flash unit for that, and it warps your platens, so it's not a good idea. It heats them up, it clogs up your screens because of the heat, and once the screen comes
Makes
down.
sense.
So you're going to need, probably a conveyor dryer, an exposure unit. You're probably going to need, an inkjet film printer, to be able to print out your films. A washout sink,
Screens.
along with, screens. So I think you could get a good package for about 10 grand.
That's
You can go less than that, but when I started, mine was 1996 or 1998 when I bought my equipment, and I think I spent $8,000 on equipment, back then.
Mhm.
So here it is, almost 20 years later, and it's 10 grand is still a pretty good number.
You could add another 0 to that. If
Well,
you want to.
if you're gonna, if you're gonna get into production, even
Yeah.
adding another 0 may not necessarily
Get
cover
it,
it all.
yeah.
Because you could get a good press for 75 grand, but like an automated press. But even all your additional equipment to make sure that you're processing everything very
Right, yeah.
quickly, it's going to start adding up.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars could easily be spent
Yeah.
on to get one shop
Right.
from scratch set up easily.
Right. And so but again, I think maybe 10 grand is a good number, because a lot of times they have packages now
Yeah.
that pretty much include everything you
Yeah.
need, and good quality equipment too. The
Mhm.
problem is, again, Eric mentioned it, is space. You do have to have more space. You do have to have isolated areas like your washout room, a dark room. Dark rooms don't have to be red light. What we always did was we did like yellow light sleeves, so we put them on our
Mhm.
fluorescent tubing, and it was just a sleeve of yellow that would block out UV rays, right, for our screens. so you can still see very well, but it wasn't harmful to your screen at all. But again, screen printing, it's very versatile, and but again, because you can print on everything that we were working with, would typically require a different type of ink. So I had shelves full of gallons upon gallons of ink. Because you have to have different colors. I mean, I did a lot of my own mixing too, but a lot of base colors, I had to have. So it takes up a lot of room.
A lot of additives and stuff too, with all the puffs and glitters and all that kind of unique stuff.
Well. So there's special effects, types of inks which work really well. But again, there's just a lot to it.
I think sometimes people go to trade shows, and we've had this even with our DTG equipment. When you're in a space that's 1 million square feet, the machines and stuff don't seem as big. Then you get home or to your shop and you bring in this printer or this whatever it is, a dryer, and all of a sudden now you realize, wow, this thing's taking up a lot more space than I realized, because it just the conceptualness of being in a huge convention center versus being in your shop are drastic. Take a tape measure and measure it all out and make sure it's all going to fit. You don't want to spend all that money and then not even fit in your shop. So,
right. And I think probably out of all the different techniques, embellishments I've done, screen printing is probably the messiest.
Yeah,
right. It is. It's the messiest.
It's the hottest.
Yeah, you just have to. But again, it's versatile. There's a lot of pros to screen printing. But once I got out of it, I told myself I was never going to get back into it again. So I sold my company, and I was just like, it was good, but with technology now moving on into DTG, obviously we can now operate in a very small area. We can, when I was running mine, I had 3,000 square foot facility, and then a lot of that, probably close to half of that, I was strictly for screen printing.
Yeah, I imagine.
Right, at least half of that, and then I had offices and stuff like that. But then I had a 10 by 10 room that I used just for direct to garment.
Oh, okay.
Right, and so I printed. I had printer, heat press, some additional supplies and shelving in a 10 foot by 10 foot room, and it wasn't along with the computer and a desk, and it wasn't like overcrowded.
Right.
So the nice thing about DTG is you can operate in a small space.
Spare bedroom.
Right, and a lot of people do.
Absolutely.
In screen printing, I operated out of a one-car garage at first.
Good.
Right, and it was.
That's about 500 square
feet. It was
feet.
Good. I mean, I had a little conveyor dryer. I had the press. I mean, I didn't have a lot of room to work around, but I did everything in a single-car garage. And so, people do it all the time.
Absolutely.
But to be, and that was my investment of, I think 8,000 or what it was, something around there. That's everything I was able to fit in.
Was that
when I
all
went to
like
an auto?
Did you buy like a whole brand new setup?
Everything was new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you bought
no.
somebody else's setup or something.
No, that was all new equipment.
Yeah, cool.
But
That's a good price.
when I bought my auto, well,
Wouldn't-
I'd already, went to this other facility.
Right.
Because there's just no way. I knew I had bought some additional equipment. I had bought some used equipment off of somebody.
Okay.
Brought all that in, and I didn't have anywhere to put it.
Oh.
So I went to the facility. So when I had bought my auto, I had already had the facility.
At that point, you already outgrown the garage, so it made it a little easier transition for you then.
Yeah. So, but with DTG, again, the footprint is much, much smaller.
Yeah, that's a big selling point for people.
Right. And again, I think we've said this before, is what we don't like doing is having people starting up. They don't have a business, they don't have customers, they don't have anything, and then just jump, headstrong into DTG and then never do anything with it.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say that somebody who has no customers has no business, no physical, business entity or what have you. I'm not saying that you couldn't make something out of it and run with it immediately, instantly, because I know there are people that do that. And so it's not that you can't, it's just if you do invest in DTG, the equipment costs are higher, and because of that, and if you don't do your maintenance and everything, and you're not using the equipment, then it can become problematic.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's part of the problem with DTG.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do with DTG is not use it.
Right.
The harder you are on the machine, the better it is. So.
Right. And so DTG, price range for a complete setup, This isn't the lowest, but we see kind of usually in the $20,000-$25,000 range.
Yeah, that'll get you a start to finish.
Right.
Everything besides maybe a computer,
Right.
Which you typically already have.
Most people have anyway.
Yeah,
So you're going to
that's
be
it.
right around $20,000-$25,000 package for
Up to
mostly new.
Hundreds of thousands, if
You
not
can go
$1 million.
less than that, and you can go
That's
much,
right.
much greater than that. Just like any of the other, it just depends on how much you want to invest in that. But again, DTG, we are, a DTG company. We talk about DTG all the time, so we're not going to get into a lot of DTG talk on the equipment side right at the moment, only because you can watch all our other videos and we can talk a lot about that. But if you do have questions right now, you can continue to send them through before we move on. We just want to make mention of that. So any other questions you guys have pertaining to what we've already discussed, make sure you get those in there. We'll take a look at them here near the end of the show. And so other than that, marketing is kind of the next area.
Yeah.
Now marketing, again, we're not marketing gurus,
No.
right? But we've done different marketing techniques that have worked. We've done them that have failed as well. So, I don't know, do you have anything off the top of your head that maybe on a marketing side? Because again, if you buy it, doesn't mean they're going to come.
Definitely,
Right.
is not.
So
a
you're gonna have to
door-to-door
market
thing.
it.
Well, you got to define your market first.
Right.
So I mean, if you're spending $10,000 a month marketing on Etsy and your clientele is a school, that was a complete waste of time.
Right.
So you have to define your market and then do some homework. What's working for? Check your competitors. How are they marketing? There's nothing wrong with checking in on your competitors to see how they're actually doing. What are they doing? Are they doing videos? Are they spending money on YouTube? Are they spending money on Facebook? Or what are they spending their money on? Where do you see them, and how are they doing it, and how well? And then, take that as a way of approaching your own marketing plan.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to try and reinvent the wheel.
Right.
There's only so many avenues to go down. You just have to define. Again, it comes back to defining your market to know where you need to market to spend your marketing dollars. So some companies don't need to spend any money on marketing.
Right.
They're selling their own stuff, or they've already established a market with a particular industry or something like that, and they don't need to spend the money on it. They're behind the scenes. I've been hired by company X to do their shirts. All I do is their stuff. I'm not worried about printing or selling for anything else. I have a contract with them. There's no need for me to spend the money on a website and building all this infrastructure for marketing when I don't need it.
Right.
If I'm a retail storefront or I have my own brand, then that's a completely different, avenue. I have to spend a lot more money marketing and getting my name out there, let people know what we do, who we are, so.
Well, even at BelQuette, we obviously have to market,
Oh, yeah.
right? But we're not going to market to kitchenware,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And people who are looking for kitchenware.
We're not at the boat show.
No, we're not at a boat show. We quite honestly, we don't go to PPAI and places like that. The
promotional product.
promotional products, because even though we would be able to have some promotional products, some people would be interested. I mean, the reality is, most of the time that's not what people are there for.
Right.
Right. They're there to resell little trinkets and
Mhm.
promotion items.
Pins and things.
So what we see is, when we're marketing, we're trying to market to DTG companies or companies who embellish shirts and
Right.
so forth. So that's how we're defining our market. So as Eric said, you do have to define your market, but then once you have that market defined, you do have to also know where to go with it,
Mhm.
right? Websites,
Obviously,
right?
it's probably the biggest. You have to have a website,
Mm-hmm.
and a website can make or break you. I mean, I've seen I've seen really strong companies that have really poor websites and have lost sales just because of the way that initial impression and that perceived value. That's marketing 101. It doesn't matter if a product only costs you a nickel. It matters if it's valued to the consumer at more than a nickel.
Right.
That's so important to people, and having a good website definitely makes a big difference. So.
Right. Okay, so obviously you need a web presence. Now the web presence, a lot of times what you've seen is, information,
Mhm.
but the information depending, if you're going to do e-commerce or you're going to actually sell online, that's going to be a lot more involved than just a web presence,
Right.
right? So it's going to be a full-fledged website. So, a lot of them nowadays, they'll do online design,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can pay for that service. You can actually get that service for free as well.
Yeah.
I think it was Alpha. I think Alpha at one time before they were Alpha Brothers. I think it's still Alpha now. They will let you use
Mm-hmm.
an online designer. It's good for them because as soon as
The
they
sales
design
insurance.
it'll actually can create POs
Yeah.
and send that PO directly to them, and they can order shirts instantly.
Yeah.
Not printed, of course.
Well, it
but-
also saves you to not have to hire somebody to do all the coding and everything. You're actually importing their catalog
right.
onto your site. It's not really your site at that point. You're kind of just using their servers and everything.
Right.
But it says you can customize what you want your customers to be able to have access to. If you don't want to sell polyester, you can don't allow polyesters to come up in the options. And so there's, like you said, there's I think not only Alpha Broder, but I think there's a couple other. I think the major ones. I think they're all doing that, or they're integrated with some of the companies that are offering those online store
Right.
type of software.
But again, even if you just build it, doesn't mean people are going to come to it. So you still have to market it, and just we saw that early on where they were just 1 and 2 sites here doing that. Now, a lot of sites do it. So how do you differentiate yourself from anybody else? If you're offering your own artwork, your own design styles on there, then obviously you might have a little bit more of an edge than somebody
Yeah.
else who's offering prepackaged designs.
But they still have to know what you're offering.
Right.
You know.
And of course, you also have to be careful because a lot of times people will go on those sites, design it, and then take that design to a competitor and say, "Can you print this?"
For cheaper.
Even though they designed it, they pretty much can do that. So you have to be careful there too. But mainly, it's about the marketing side. Again, it's trying to penetrate different areas of the market, and you have to think outside of the proverbial box where everything's contained a certain way. You got to think outside of that so that you do stand out.
So you
right?
think
Niche
about
marketing.
You think about other markets like outside of T-shirt printing. Well, even go back to when I had one of my first clothing lines. It was for the automotive racing industry, and I sponsored race drivers. And so I would give them free shirts to wear at the events. So they're walking around. People are coming up. They want to meet the drivers. They're racing and they want to sign autographs. So my logo's on their car. They're wearing my shirt, and I didn't pay anything. I just gave it to them. That was just part of our agreement was, I will sponsor you through an apparel sponsorship. I'll give you anything you want to send our catalog for free. You just have to wear it whenever you're at car shows and at press meetings and stuff like that.
Right.
And I sold a ton that way. It worked out very well. And we didn't have any money to actually go out and put an ad in a magazine or anything, in a car magazine. So we spent our money going from show to show to show, peddling it, and we did in your face marketing. There was no print, there was no online social media marketing. I mean, back then Facebook didn't even exist.
Right.
So none of that kind of was there. So we physically went kind of like a door to door, only went car show to car show to market our stuff, and it worked out very well.
Well, now you have to look at what trends, right? What is it, not necessarily in design wise, but what's trending? How are people finding the information that pertains to
right.
them? So
Are
a
you
lot of it's
tweeting?
social,
Right.
Now a lot of it's social, and there's a lot of companies that really haven't grabbed the hold of the social side yet, because 1, they may not understand it, or 2, they just don't have time for it, or 3, they're so used to their old way of doing things that they don't give way to something new.
There's a lot of labor involved in social media
absolutely.
marketing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time invested in that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not something. It's a full-time job
Yeah,
for a lot of
absolutely can be.
companies.
Yeah.
To maintain. You have a Twitter account, an Instagram account, Facebook account, LinkedIn. You got all these things you have to post, monitor, respond to, send out information for, follow-ups, and that can take a lot of hours out of your day. But you have to do it.
Well, and I'm
find
sure
somebody to
there's
do it.
people that are watching now that do that.
Sure.
And
I
they're
do
probably some of the top selling, of every year. They probably
Yeah.
sell
In
more
their
and
market.
more and more in their market every year. So, obviously, you still have to do the social side. You can add contests to that. You can, there's all different things in the
Yeah.
marketing side. But again, like Eric said, it is a lot of work, but you have to be consistent in it, and doing it one time doesn't guarantee success.
That's not going to help you at all.
But as you continue to do it, you build up groups online, and you get, we've heard lots of stories with a lot of different people, with different methodologies, become very successful at it because they were consistent and persistent. So they did not stop; they continued on.
Marketing professionals have always told me that you have to get. I can't remember what the number is, but it's like 6 times, something like that. Your logo or your name has to get put in front of somebody's face before it becomes ingrained in their mind. They see it once, it's gone.
Right.
They see it 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden it sticks with them.
Right.
So that definitely don't throw all your eggs in one basket. Try a few different things and see which one works best for your market. But when you find something, it's just like a garment. When you find a garment that works best for you, stick with it. You find an outlet, a marketing outlet that works best for you, be it social, be it a coupon, who cares? Whatever it is, if that works for you in your market and you're selling, stick with it.
Right.
And spend money on it and keep going at it and doing it until it doesn't work anymore. And then try another avenue.
Yep. Okay, just want to find out, did we have any
Do we have a winner?
questions?
Oh, wait.
We didn't do that. Question, what is the best transfer printer?
The one that works best for your needs.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend. There are 13-inch printers. I'm not a fan of basic transfers. The ones that transfer the material as well. So quite honestly, most of them are probably going to be very similar to each other. It's just going to end up being, a matter of trying to find out, like Eric said, what's best for you. But most of the time, you're going to want to look for one that's 13 inches wide, because the tabloid size, the 11 by 17, I find in T-shirt embellishment usually isn't large enough. In my screen printing days, everything that I've done was usually no greater than 12.5 inches. Right,
That's
but
a big.
It was almost 12 to 12.5 inches wide.
Yeah.
Was very common.
Yeah, that's still big.
Right, it is large. If you're going to do a very tall graphic, then if you go 12 inches wide, then it's going to be very, very large.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do that. But most of the time, 13-inch printers. And again, it's going to depend on what you want. Are you going to want laser? Are you going to want inkjet? But again, most of the time, if you're only relying on transfer printers, then you're going to end up, transferring the material along with the print.
I would probably suggest, if you're going that route, obviously go to a trade show or get some samples from various transfer printer companies. I've seen, I think it's Oki Data has a great, they don't even know what the model number is, but it's a big laser that's got white toner in it. And our buddy Doc, now he's at Coastal Supply. They sell some transfer stuff there as well, but I've seen him use it at trade shows, and it's done some pretty good looking stuff. I mean, it's come a long way from where it was even 5 years ago.
Right. And that's 13 inches wide.
Yeah, it's a big one.
But again, on that one, from people that I've had feedback from, a lot of them they said it feels like paper. And so again, it's just that's why, and I'm not trying to disparage that technology.
No.
Because I'm fond of DTG. It's not that at all. It's just I have experience with it, and because I have experience with it, I don't prefer that. But again, if that's the route you want to go, you can get in relatively inexpensive. You just basically need a decent printer and a decent heat press. Again, I would look for nothing less than 13 inches wide.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're going to go with the inkjet, they are making kits and so forth. I used to sell kits, that would have continuous ink systems on them and so forth.
So you're not replacing the cartridge every 5 prints.
Right. So again, it's a really, like Eric said, I think probably one of the best things if you're looking at that, you can go to a trade show, see what's out there, what people are offering.
Yeah. There's a lot of options. So.
Okay. Other than that, doesn't look like we have any other questions.
This is a nice, easy, pretty short show for us typically.
Well, it's still a long show.
I know it was almost an hour, but still.
But it was more relaxed show. So again, we didn't do the T-shirt contest today, but we're going to still offer the coupon code as a way of saying thanks. Last week it was Pinky for the
Pinky and the
shirt
Brain.
wore, Pinky and the Brain. So we're going to actually just continue that for another week. It's
Definitely.
going to be Pinky. So again, anything that you want to order on our website is 10% off. And in order to get that 10% off, you just go into add whatever you want to your shopping cart in the upper right hand corner, click on view cart, and in there's where you would enter your coupon
Take
code.
advantage of this, guys. I
Yep.
mean, it's a really, you guys can save a lot of money on inks and supplies. So take advantage.
So 10% off. So, but other than that, I don't think there was really anything else.
Awesome.
And so again, just as a reminder, every Tuesday it's 4 p.m. And again, if you haven't seen our site yet, you can go out to www.bq.live.
.live.
Yep, and that's where Eric mentioned earlier that we archive all the shows out there as well. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, and you can also send us an email anytime at info@bq.live.
Awesome.
So,
Great.
anything else? You
I think
good?
we're good. Yeah, we're good. If you need anything, extension 105.
All right. That's what he said, 101. Well, anyway, we'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
again, guys.
See ya.